I'm sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, and I've been here for 2 hours. I came here to buy milk. That was 2 hours ago. The milk is still in the store. I'm still in my car. And I can't make myself go home. Because home is where my wife is. My wife, Rachel. The woman I've been married to for 7 years. The woman I thought I knew completely. The woman who's been writing a blog about me for 5 years. A blog where she refers to me as her project. Where she documents her attempts to fix me, improve me, turn me into the husband she actually wants instead of the husband she got. My name is Nathan Pierce. I'm 34 years old, and 3 hours ago I discovered that my entire marriage has been a performance, an experiment, a home improvement project, where I'm the house that needs renovating. I need to explain how I found out, because the discovery itself feels like something out of a nightmare, like it can't be real, but it is real. I have screenshots, I have proof, I have 5 years of blog posts describing my failures, my flaws, my inadequacies, all written by the woman who promised to love me for better or worse. It started this morning. Rachel had left her laptop open on the kitchen table. She'd gone for a run, said she'd be back in an hour. I was making coffee, walking past the table, and I saw her screen was still on. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy or look through her things. But her laptop was right there, unlocked, and I glanced at it as I walked by. The screen showed a blog post. I could see it was a draft, unpublished. The title caught my eye. Month 57, The Sock Drawer Incident and What It Says About Male Domestication. Month 57. That was a weird title. And male domestication? What the hell was that about? I stopped, looked closer. The blog was called Project Husband, a long-term experiment in marriage optimization. Project Husband. I felt this weird twist in my stomach. Told myself it was probably some kind of joke. Some funny blog Rachel and her friends were doing about married life. People write blogs about all kinds of things. It didn't mean anything. But I couldn't walk away. I sat down, started reading. The post was about me, about how I'd put my socks in the wrong drawer again, even though Rachel had been trying to train me, that was the word she used, train me, to put them in the correct drawer for months. She wrote about how this was emblematic of a larger issue, which was my resistance to organization systems and structure. How she'd been working on this particular behavior modification for almost 6 months with limited success. Behavior modification. Like I was a dog she was trying to teach tricks to. I scrolled up. There were dozens of posts. Hundreds. I clicked on the archive. The blog started 5 years ago, about 2 years into our marriage. The first post was titled, Introduction, The Fixer-Upper Husband. I read it. Then I read the next post, and the next. I couldn't stop. It was like watching a car crash. Horrible, but impossible to look away from. In that first post, Rachel explained the concept of the blog. She'd gotten married to a man she loved, she wrote, but who wasn't quite right. Wasn't quite what she'd envisioned her husband would be. He had potential, she said, but needed work. Lots of work. So she'd decided to approach marriage as a long-term project, a systematic attempt to shape and mold her husband into the partner she actually wanted. She'd document the process, the techniques she used, the successes and failures. Other women could learn from her experience, could apply her methods to their own fixer-upper husbands. She referred to me as Subject H throughout the blog, never used my name, but it was clearly me. The details of our life, our apartment, our jobs, our routines, all of it was there, just with identifying information removed. I spent the next 2 hours reading, post after post after post, 5 years of my wife's detailed observations of everything wrong with me and her attempts to fix it. There were posts about my communication style, how I was too direct and needed to learn to be more diplomatic. She'd been using something she called positive reinforcement training, where she'd praise me excessively when I phrased things the way she wanted and withdraw affection when I didn't. Posts about my appearance, how she'd gradually been upgrading my wardrobe by throwing out clothes she didn't like and replacing them with things she approved of. How she'd convinced me to change my hairstyle by repeatedly mentioning how much better other men looked with different cuts until I got self-conscious enough to change. Posts about my hobbies, how she'd been trying to redirect my interests from things she considered immature, video games, fantasy football, to things she found more acceptable, wine tasting, hiking, book clubs. How she'd been using strategic scheduling and subtle discouragement to make my preferred hobbies less accessible while making her preferred activities seem more appealing. Posts about my social life, how she'd been gradually distancing me from friends she didn't approve of, friends she thought were bad influences or not ambitious enough or too juvenile. She'd document the techniques she used, always being busy when I wanted to hang out with them, mentioning concerns about their influence on me, suggesting alternative plans with people she preferred, posts about our sex life, detailed posts about how she'd been training me to perform the way she wanted in bed, what behaviors she rewarded and how, what behaviors she punished and how. It was clinical, methodical, like she was describing training a pet. Posts about my career, how she'd been pushing me toward a promotion I didn't want because she thought I should be more ambitious, how she'd been dropping hints about other people our age who were more successful, making me feel inadequate until I worked harder. Every single aspect of my life for 5 years. Documented, analyzed, strategized, manipulated, and the tone. God, the tone of these posts. So condescending, so smug, so absolutely certain that she knew better than me what I should be, how I should act, what kind of person I should become. There was a post from 3 years ago titled "The Breakthrough Subject H Finally Internalizes His Training." She was celebrating that I'd stopped questioning some of her decisions and started automatically deferring to her judgment. She saw this as success, as progress, as evidence that her project was working. I remember that time. I remember feeling like maybe I was too rigid, too set in my ways. Rachel had been so patient, so understanding, so supportive. I'd thought I was growing as a person, becoming more mature, more flexible, more open to compromise. Now I know I was being trained, systematically conditioned to give up my own preferences and adopt hers, and she'd been documenting my compliance like a scientist recording data points. The blog had followers, over 10,000 of them. There were comments on every post, women praising Rachel's techniques, asking for advice on how to handle their own resistant husbands, sharing their own stories of behavior modification and marriage optimization. It was a whole community, a whole network of women treating their husbands like renovation projects. And Rachel was one of the stars, one of the most successful project managers. There were posts where she advised other women, told them how to be patient, how to be subtle, how to make their husbands think changes were their own ideas, how to use praise and criticism strategically, how to gradually reshape someone's personality without them realizing it was happening. She wrote about mistakes she'd made, times she'd pushed too hard too fast, and I'd resisted. How she'd learned to be more gradual, more patient. How she'd learned to celebrate small victories and not get discouraged by setbacks. There was a post from 18 months ago where she wrote about a fight we'd had. I'd pushed back on something, told her I felt like she was trying to control me. In the blog post, she called it Subject H's Rebellion Phase, and discussed strategies for getting through it without letting me regain too much autonomy. I remember that fight. I remember Rachel being so calm, so reasonable, telling me she wasn't trying to control me, she just wanted what was best for us, for me. She'd been so understanding of my feelings, so willing to talk it through, so loving. And the whole time, she was viewing it as an obstacle to overcome in her project. My feelings weren't valid concerns. They were setbacks in her program, resistance to be managed and overcome. I found posts about our finances, how she'd been slowly taking over management of our money because she didn't trust me with it, how she'd been using access to fun money as a reward system. More money when I behaved how she wanted, less when I didn't. Posts about how we spent our time, how she'd engineered our schedules so I had less free time, less time to myself, less time to do things without her input, how she saw this as creating dependency, making me more reliant on her, less likely to stray from the person she was molding me into. There was even a post about our wedding anniversary last year. We'd gone to this fancy restaurant I wouldn't normally choose, done this whole romantic thing that felt slightly out of character for me, but Rachel had seemed so happy. In the blog post, she wrote about how anniversaries were excellent opportunities for reinforcing the identity she wanted me to adopt. How she'd carefully planned an evening that reflected the sophisticated, cultured man she was trying to turn me into rather than the more casual person I naturally was. How my willingness to embrace that evening without complaint was evidence of successful long-term conditioning. I'd thought that anniversary was a beautiful celebration of our love. Turned out it was a performance review, a measurement of how well she'd programmed me. The most recent post was from 2 days ago. Month 57, but not the sock drawer one I'd initially seen. That was still in drafts. This published post was titled Plateau Phase, When Progress Stalls. Rachel wrote about how lately I'd been backsliding, reverting to old behaviors, pushing back more. She was concerned that she'd reached the limits of what she could accomplish with her current techniques. She was considering more aggressive strategies. Maybe therapy. Not because I needed it, but because a therapist could be another voice reinforcing the changes she wanted. Or maybe, she wrote, it was time to accept that Subject H had reached his maximum potential, that some projects simply couldn't be fully completed, that she'd done her best, but maybe this particular fixer-upper could only be improved so much. She was considering, and these were her exact words, whether to continue the project or cut her losses and start over with better raw material. Start over with better raw material. She was talking about leaving me, about finding someone else to be her project, someone with more potential, someone more easily molded into her ideal husband. After 7 years of marriage, 5 years of systematic manipulation and behavior modification, she was considering throwing me away like a failed experiment. I sat there at that kitchen table, reading all of this, and I felt like I was floating outside my own body. Like this couldn't be real, couldn't be my life, couldn't be my wife. But it was. It is. I heard the front door open. Rachel was back from her run. I quickly closed the laptop, stood up from the table. She came into the kitchen, sweaty and cheerful, asked if I'd made coffee. I said yes. She kissed my cheek, said she was going to shower. I stood there watching her walk away. This woman I'd been married to for 7 years. This woman who'd been systematically manipulating every aspect of my personality and behavior while documenting it all for an audience of thousands. While she was in the shower, I opened the laptop again, took screenshots of everything, every post, every comment, every piece of advice she'd given other women about how to train their husbands without them knowing. I uploaded all of it to my personal cloud storage, emailed copies to myself, made sure I had evidence. Then I closed the laptop, grabbed my keys, said I was going to the store. That was 3 hours ago. I've been sitting in this parking lot, going through the screenshots on my phone, trying to process what I've learned. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage is a lie. Every compromise I thought we'd reach together. That was her steering me toward her preferred outcome. Every change I'd made thinking I was growing as a person. That was her molding me into someone else. Every moment I'd felt understood and loved, that was her managing me like a project. I keep thinking about specific moments, times when Rachel was so supportive, so understanding, so perfect, and wondering if any of it was real or if it was all strategic, all calculated to achieve her desired outcome. I think about the friends I've lost touch with. I thought it was natural drifting apart. Now I know Rachel had been orchestrating it, making it harder to see them, making me feel bad about spending time with them, suggesting I'd outgrown them. I think about my job. I'd thought I wanted that promotion, thought I was being ambitious. Now I wonder if that desire was even mine or if Rachel had implanted it. I think about who I was 7 years ago when we got married and who I am now. How much of that change was genuine growth and how much was Rachel's programming? Do I even know who I really am anymore? The thing that kills me most is how good she was at it, how seamless, how I never suspected anything. I thought I had a good marriage, thought we communicated well, thought we were partners who respected each other. Turns out I was a project, an experiment, subject H in a long-term study on marriage optimization. And I wasn't even doing well at being her project. I was stalling out, reverting, failing to reach my potential. My phone has been buzzing. Rachel texting asking where I am, when I'll be home, if everything is okay. I haven't responded. Don't know what to say. Don't know if I can look at her without screaming or crying or both. Part of me wants to go home and confront her. Print out all the blog posts and throw them in her face. Demand to know how she could do this, how she could violate my trust and autonomy so thoroughly while claiming to love me. Part of me wants to just leave, pack my stuff while she's at work tomorrow and disappear, file for divorce, and never speak to her again. Let her figure out what happened from the legal papers. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw the blog. Go home, kiss my wife, keep living this life where at least I was happy, even if it wasn't real. Ignorance is bliss, right? But I can't do that. Can't unknow this. Can't go back to being subject H, blissfully unaware that I'm being systematically manipulated by someone who's supposed to love me. I called my brother, told him I needed to stay with him for a few days. He asked if Rachel and I had a fight. I said something like that. He said I could stay as long as I needed. I'm going to drive there now. Get some distance. Try to process this before I have to face Rachel. But eventually, I'll have to face her. Have to confront her. Have to ask her how she could do this to me. And I don't know what I'm going to do if she doesn't understand why it's wrong. If she thinks it's acceptable to treat your spouse like a renovation project. If she sees nothing wrong with 5 years of systematic manipulation and public documentation of her efforts. What if she thinks she was helping me, improving me, making me better? What if she genuinely believes that wives are supposed to shape their husbands, that marriage is about one person fixing another, that love means changing someone into what you want them to be? I don't know if I can stay married to someone who thinks that way, who sees me as raw material instead of a person, who views our relationship as a project instead of a partnership. But 7 years. 7 years of my life. 7 years of thinking I was building something real with someone who actually saw me as an experiment. How do you come back from that? How do you rebuild trust when you discover it was completely one-sided? When you discover your wife has been writing a manual on how to manipulate you without your knowledge? My phone is buzzing again. Rachel calling this time. I let it go to voicemail. I'm starting the car, driving to my brother's. I'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Tonight, I just need to sit with this. Need to mourn the marriage I thought I had. Need to process the fact that the woman I loved saw me as a project to be managed, rather than a person to be loved. Subject H is going offline. Nathan is taking his life back. I just wish I knew who Nathan actually was anymore, underneath all of Rachel's programming and behavior modification and strategic conditioning. I guess I'm about to find out. Update. It's been 6 hours since I left the parking lot. I'm at my brother's place now. He gave me beer and space, and didn't ask too many questions when he saw my face. I've been reading more of the blog. Can't help myself. It's like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurts. There's a whole series of posts about sex, about how she trained me to be more adventurous in bed by using a carefully calibrated system of enthusiasm and disappointment, about how she shaped my preferences over time to match hers. Reading these posts, I realized something horrifying. I don't know if any of my sexual preferences are actually mine anymore. Did I develop these interests naturally? Or did Rachel condition them into me? Are any of my desires actually my own? There are posts about arguments, about how she learned to win disagreements by using specific tactics, staying calm while I got emotional, then using my emotionality as evidence that I was being irrational. How she'd graciously let me think I'd won small arguments so she could win big ones. How she'd frame things so I'd argue myself into her position thinking it was my idea. I remember these fights. Remember thinking Rachel was so mature, so reasonable. Remember feeling like maybe I was overreacting, being too sensitive, not thinking clearly. Now I know that was intentional, strategic, designed to make me doubt my own perceptions and defer to her judgment. There's a post about my relationship with my family, how she'd been creating distance there too, but slowly, carefully. Making family gatherings stressful by being subtly critical after each one. Suggesting we had better things to do. Making plans that conflicted with family events just often enough that I'd start choosing her over them. I hadn't noticed this happening, but now that she's pointed it out, I realize I do see my family less, do feel more stressed about family obligations, do sometimes choose Rachel's plans over theirs, and she planned that, orchestrated it, saw my family relationships as competing with her control over me, and systematically weakened them. What kind of person does that? What kind of person marries someone and then spends years carefully dismantling every part of their identity, their relationships, their autonomy, and documents it publicly, shares her techniques with thousands of other women, creates a whole community based on treating husbands like objects to be improved? My brother just came in and asked if I was okay. I showed him the blog, watched his face as he read through a few posts. He looked sick, said this was fucked up, said I needed to leave her, said nobody should treat another person this way, especially not someone they claim to love. I asked him if he thought I'd changed a lot since marrying Rachel. He was quiet for a minute. Then he said, yeah, I had. Said he'd thought it was just me maturing, growing up. But looking at the blog, seeing it all laid out, he could see it wasn't natural growth. It was systematic dismantling of who I used to be. He said he missed the old me sometimes, the one who was more relaxed, more spontaneous, more himself. Said the current me seemed stressed a lot, always worrying about doing things right, about meeting some standard he couldn't quite define. That standard was Rachel's, the standard I could never quite meet because the whole point of the project was that I was always falling short, always needing more improvement. I asked my brother when he'd last seen me genuinely happy. He thought about it, said he couldn't remember. Maybe a few years ago? Before I'd become so worried about everything? I can't remember either. Can't remember the last time I felt fully relaxed, fully myself, fully acceptable as I was, because I wasn't acceptable. Not to Rachel. I was always a work in progress, always needing modification, always falling short of the ideal husband she was trying to create. I'm so angry, angrier than I've ever been in my life, but I'm also sad, heartbroken, because I loved her, really loved her, would have done anything for her. Except I guess I did do anything for her. I reshaped my entire personality, gave up my autonomy, distanced myself from my friends and family, changed my behaviors and preferences and opinions, all because she was systematically conditioning me to. And I never even knew it was happening. Rachel has called 12 times now, left voicemails, sent texts asking where I am, if I'm safe, what's wrong, please just come home so we can talk. My brother says I should text her back so she doesn't file a missing person report or something. So I sent one text. I found your blog. Staying at Tom's. Need time to think. The response came in seconds. Just one word. Shit. Not, I can explain. Not, it's not what you think. Not, I'm sorry. Just shit. Like she's upset she got caught. Like the problem isn't what she did, but that I found out about it. She's calling again. Tom says I don't have to answer. I'm not going to. Tomorrow I'll call a lawyer. Start figuring out what divorce looks like. Start trying to untangle 7 years of marriage built on lies and manipulation. But tonight, I'm just going to sit here and try to figure out who I am. Who I was before Rachel started her project. Who I might have become if I'd been allowed to grow naturally instead of being shaped and molded into someone else's ideal. I don't know if I'll ever fully know. Don't know if I can undo 5 years of conditioning. Don't know what parts of current me are genuine and what parts are Rachel's programming. But I'm going to try. I'm going to take my life back. I'm going to be Nathan again, whoever he is, instead of Subject H, and I'm never going to let anyone treat me like a project again. Rachel can find someone new to fix, someone with better raw material, someone more willing to be molded and shaped and trained. I'm done being anyone's experiment. I'm done being anything less than a full person who deserves to be loved as he is, not as someone's improvement project. The blog is still up, still public, still documenting 5 years of my systematic manipulation to thousands of followers. Tom asked if I want him to report it, to try to get it taken down. Part of me does. Part of me wants to erase all evidence of what Rachel did to me, but part of me thinks it should stay up, as evidence for the divorce, as proof of what she's really like, as a warning to whoever she tries this with next. Let the world see what she really is. Let her followers see that Subject H was a real person whose life she systematically destroyed while pretending to love him. Let everyone know what Project Husband really meant. Maybe I'll post my own response on the blog. Tell the readers who Subject H really is, how it feels to discover your wife has been treating you like an experiment for 5 years.